Flipping heck. It's only more L95. Having done all that, let's get this arch out. So I'm going to start with this side. This side's worse. That side I could probably patch up. Worst case scenario, I could patch that side. This side is horrendous. So I'm going to start working on getting this arch out. So really, how am I going to do this? Well, I'm going to move the green chair first of all. I can go over there. Oh, I'll tell you what I am going to do. It's my car, my rules. Are we locked or are we just... Oh no, because I had to adjust all these bloody pins. When the car got itself into a pickle, I had to adjust all these pins. So basically what we got now is the door lock is a bit on the tight side, so that's easy enough to adjust. I think realistically what I'm probably going to do here is I'm going to start by taking the floor out. So if I take this panel out here, and then more or less just chop the floor front to back, it will come out. Then I can work out what is going on with the arch. I'm going to take the plastic trim off that goes up the C-pillar. Don't want to damage that. I'll investigate tonight whether I can actually get that brand spanking new. If I can, and depending on the cost of it, it might be cheaper to replace it. You can see it's been off already because I was welding down here. Then I'm probably going to need to take the outer arch off. So you can see this has been already drilled the spot welds when I did the repair here. This is I thought it was the original, it's not. It is a replacement arch, it's black. I thought it was blue when I first saw it through all the dust and the shite. So that being a replacement means that I cut through the welds here, through the welds there, through that weld, drill the spot welds. There'll be a weld onto the end of the sill plate down here. I'm going to take the sill cover off, and then this panel can come off. Then I'll decide whether I'm going to reuse that or just get another one. I think you can guess where we're going with that. Can you guess? Can you guess? Rebuild the bottom of the C-pillar so it's back out as it should be. Now these ones on these earlier cars than the soft dash don't tend to rot out at the bottom edge like the later cars do. Don't know why? Answers on a postcard. And then I think probably, because we can see we lost the lip up here, what I might do is chop along here to give a lip to the side of the curtain. On the inside, cut it off flush. At least I know roughly where the arch is going to go. I've got new pressed arches. I haven't opened that big yet, have I? New pressed arches. But yes, as you can see, the curtain only needs really localised repairs. Apart from the damage here, which was where it got crushed, there's a hole there and there's a hole there. We'll deal with that hole when I do the arch. That one's going to be fairly straightforward to do. I'm going to take all this LPG shit out. Flow gas. I think, as I understand it, I believe their contract's not been renewed. So because of that, you're not going to be able to get LPG for cars, which is incredible, really, because they're bleating on about cleaning up the environment, cleaning the air. Well, one of these running on LPG didn't get any fucking cleaner. Well, except for an electric vehicle, but you know about those, don't you? Now you know the truth about electric vehicles. And the I'm all right Jack approach. I love electric, by the way. I love the torque. I love the power. I just don't like the eco message that sits in behind it. Right. With this lot, what I'm basically going to do as well, where it's kind of just zinc coated at the moment, I'll tidy up the welds, which you're going to be able to see when you open the tailgate, but the rest of it I'll just brush paint with a 2-pack primer. I'm not going to start spraying because I just got to mask the weld up, so I'll brush paint it. It's all hidden. All I really want to do is protect it. Yes, I think. I say that quite a lot, don't I? Well, this is all coming apart distressingly easily. Rear end of the sill, rear body mounting's disappeared. It's just been sitting for far too long. You can see here the sill actually probably isn't in bad order. I could probably rebuild that rather than replacing it. The top edge of the sill is in good order, apart from all the crap and the grot. I then thought, do you know what? I'm going to have a look at the front end of the sill. Oh, for fuck's sake. But again, I need to get and have a good look underneath the sill and find out what's going on, and it could well end up that I patch the top edge of the sill there. I don't want to go too berserk with it. Now, this arch, it really shouldn't be resting on the spring turret like that. And again, this is more evidence of the kind of damage caused by overloading this thing. That everything at the back end here has got itself bent and twisted and warped. So much so that when I actually cut the B post, because the C pillar is now free from the arch itself, mostly free, the bloody thing lifted. It went boing and lifted up. Now, it's not lifted up by a huge amount, the door still closes and it still kind of lines up. So I'm not that bothered about it. I just think what's happened is the reason for the back end being an inch too low, I probably should have released the tension up here prior to jacking the back end of the car up. Now, the only damage I've really done is by undoing damage that I've caused. So, for instance, this piece in here, where you can see that the floor is clearly bent, it's straightened that out to a certain extent. Now, as you can see, there's not actually an awful lot holding this arch in. So I'm going to cut through some of the welds. I need to retain this piece here, folks, or make another one. This piece here is not included on the replacement arch. So these arches are BOGE Standardo DDS arches. I've been on their website this morning and I've ordered up the outer arch, the closing panel down here, and I'll just do the whole fucking lot. Pardon the expression, and I'm going to end up replacing the rear sill mounting as well. So that's one thing I hadn't anticipated. But the trick here really is, and this is I had a day off the Stone Cruncher yesterday, and I'm not moaning at the guys. The guys, you know, obviously, I'm not moaning in the slightest. I should be clear on this. Fuck me, that thing gets in your ears. You can't cope with it sometimes. Sometimes you just got to kind of put the headphones on and listen to some really, really loud thrash metal or something just to get it out of your head. Now, when Dale popped up yesterday, he very kindly dropped off some more bags for me. These bags are really useful. Nylon bags, big nylon bags. I just put the scrap in them and so forth and reuse them and reuse them and reuse them. But he also bought me a ton of these paint hooks. They're actually sky hooks, I think. But yeah, paint hooks. So thanks, Dale, for that. For the bags, for the pair of minus siders that you bought me up. Thank you. And yeah, that's really, really bloody useful, those. Right, I need to get this I've got a couple of hours ready to get this arch out and the car out of the workshop, because I've got another project coming in. Oh God, I need another project. What I need is another project. It's a mechanical project, so I could spread my time in between doing the welding on that, cutting on that, because the next phase on that one is really to pull it all apart. I don't know why I'm telling you all this in an L95 video, but this is kind of like this work. Obviously, I'm not paying myself to do this job. This is me doing this job. But unless I get this car back on the road, I might as well sell it, because it's never going to happen. Which is why it's happened over this weekend. So it's not as bad as it looks. It's actually far, far better than it looks, in theory. So I took the floor out because I found out one of the supports are completely broken at the front end over there, which again was probably leading towards the reason why the car was not level at the back. Now it is, because the cross members all in place. I could start basically building it all back up again. Now, I still need to drill along this edge to get the remains. This piece here is the remains of the rear floor. All of this needs to come out still, but it's so close. I need to tidy up this edge here, get this old closing piece off here. I'll go do all of that, get the arch welded in, get the floor welded in. Then I'm going to work on what I'm going to do with the sill. It might just be a localised repair on the sill for now, because I want to get the car back on the road and I really don't want to be doing a complete sill replacement. However, that said, oh, for fuck's sake. So in here, obviously we're looking at the top edge of the chassis. While I've got it stripped to this level, to this extent, I'm going to clean the top edge of the chassis and get everything really tidied up. It wants a damn good pressure wash off, get all the mud and everything off. The BOGE unit I don't think is doing anything at all. So again, while it's all apart, I'm going to get Mr. Windy on these 4 bolts and see if there's any load on this BOGE unit at all. I'm expecting not. That's easy enough to change when the boot floor's out. You don't need to take the boot floor out to do it, but it's a lot easier to change when the boot floor's out, if you get my drift. And then really it's going to be Mr. Zippy all over the top of this chassis. So I'm going to start by brushing all of the loose detritus out of the way, get masked up and get in here and go nuts. And then over here you can see I've got the old fuel lines. Now interestingly, that fuel line there looks like it's on its way again. So I'm going to replace the fuel line. There's the filter down there. So I've got a new fuel line from ABE, Paul at ABE, link below. Most of this is just mud. This is not surface rock. That's rust. Oh, that's easy enough to fix that. This is just good mud. Once I've zipped it all back, then I can paint the chassis. Work my way forwards with it. Yeah, so Paul ABE makes the original steel pipe. As you can see, what I've basically done here is I've used plumbing fixings and Jubilee clips in order to make up a feed and a return. It could be that the pipes I've put in are more than good enough for the job, in which case I shall leave them in place. The strap over the top of the tank looks in good order. So again, just clean it. There's no point replacing stuff for the sake of replacing stuff. That exhaust rubber might need replacing. And then here, we've already got all of the kind of loom and so forth. This is all of the ABS sensor loom that will be strapped onto the cross member that goes across here. So that will all be strapped up there. Then there's a second cross member which goes over the top here. That's the remains of the cross member which broke. And that was just sitting there, and the floor was actually resting on top of the chassis here. Now I've released all of that tension, the whole bloody thing's straightened up properly. So yeah, it's a worthwhile exercise. Now this door does close, but I need to be a little bit patient with it because obviously there's nothing supporting the C-post. Pile of scrap is growing. I need to retrieve the round plate off there. That needs to come off. The rest of it is scrap. But these are all original to the car, these cross members. The arch is original to the car. The floor there that I've chopped out is all original to the car. Okay, I've patched on this side and I've patched on the other side as well. But I think it's actually survived in reasonable order. Here, this is all the breather pipe for the fuel tank. Just all needs cleaning up. So I'm going to crack on with really drilling spot welds, cleaning things up and getting this ready. I've already spot welds pop riveted together the inner arch and floor section, which I can line up, but I wanted to tidy up all the edges first of all. Once I know this fits, then I'll weld this and I'll weld it into the car. Start building some structure back into the side of the car. Finish that side before I start on this side. At the moment there's still structure in this side because I've left the arch in place. Although there's nothing really there's a fair amount of flex in it. There's nowhere near as much as there is on the other side. So for instance, I can open the door and it closes. You can see there's flex down here, but so that's the idea there. Doesn't that sound nice as it closed? And then obviously all of this shit is going to go. It's got to get worse before it gets better, really, hasn't it? Right. So yeah, cut all that shit off over there. Cut that lip off up there. Get all that edge over there ready to accept the new floor and the new arch, and then I'm going to zip the frame back. Oh, first and foremost, I undid the bolts on the top of the BOGE unit, and that's in good order. Looks filthy, looks horrible, but it's in good order. I've been over with Mr. Tappy and really been kind of working over, fuck's sake, one second, working over the top of the chassis. This hole I knew about. That can be fairly easily repaired. These are fuel lines. And I was thinking about what I was going to do about that really, but then my hand was somewhat forced. Okay, so the fuel tank's going to have to come out. It's with the boot floor out. I'm just going to lift the fuel tank out through the top, so I'm not going to worry about undoing the problem with getting a fuel tank, plastic fuel tank, out of one of these classic Range Rovers is always the bolts that secure these arms onto the chassis. And they're always seized solid, and you always have to cut them out, and then you always have to drill it, and it always ends up being an absolute and utter ball's ache of work. So I shall lift the fuel tank out through the top. There's barely any fuel in this thing anyway, so that's my next job, and then that gives me, I think, more space. I think with the fuel tank out of the way, I'm going to come on to that in a second, but with the fuel tank out of the way, I can make the repairs, I can get the fuel lines off, I can get it all sorted out, and improve this car immeasurably. Once I've got this chassis, you can see the chassis is actually, underneath all the mud and the crud, the chassis is in generally very good order. There's a lot of surface rust on that, so it's going to get treated and it's going to get painted. The majority of this has occurred in the time since it's been sitting here doing fuck all, I'm afraid to say. The chassis certainly didn't look this way just before I laid it up, and this is all just because it just got itself in a right. See, there's blue paint under there. Look at that. So I'm inclined. No, I'm not going to take it up to the steam wash. I was going to say I'll take it up to the steam wash and just get them to jet wash the chassis off, but I don't know. I've got my headlining and everything in here, and I've got the rest of the interior in here, and I really don't want the whole thing to be soaked. So, with that in mind, right, let's go over the other side now. Oh my goodness. Right, now on this side, you can see I've very loosely clamped the wing into place. I drilled the remains of the old wing off, and now I know that the thing lines up, fits, I'm happy with it. I'm going to weld the arch to the base here, and then with that done, then I can weld the thing into the car, and it becomes something that's actually going back on. Now, before I do go berserk with this, I need to sort this mess out here. It was a hasty patch that I lobbed in, and I think maybe it needs to be done a bit better than that. So probably going to end up cutting quite a lot of this out, but really I want to get this thing in before I go too far. Now, with regards to this lip, which I cut off yesterday, there's an incredible amount of the seam sealer. This all would have been seam sealed before the body went onto the chassis. So all of this crap really is just going to be in the way of anything that I'm planning on welding. So what I might actually do, and bearing in mind that all of the bolt holes for the floor are fucked, I'm actually inclined to take this thing off along the top here, making a new step. In fact, it's probably very similar to the profile of this step, and you can get a repair section for this step. Put it back on the top, and basically seam weld it into place. I did hit the chassis, by the way, with a zip wheel yesterday. You can see that went back to bare steel quite quickly. There was no real nasties there. However, it was just chucking clouds of shit up into the air. So rather than using the zip wheel, I might actually use the needle scaler. It's a bit more aggressive, but if there are holes in the chassis, I'd rather know about it now rather than when the whole fucking thing's gone back together again. So yes, and then really sort all this lot out. I'm going to basically cut this off level here. I'll make up a new lip which I shall weld onto the outside edge of the arch here. treat all the rust, get it welded back in, get some strength and structure back into this body. Now, it might seem like this is a massive undertaking, and if I'm honest, you're absolutely right, but there's nothing really here that is requiring special tools. Okay, I've used the reciprocating saw a couple of times, but the majority of the time we'd probably get away with just a basic 110mm angle grinder, a half decent spot weld drill, and the only real specialist thing you're going to need here is a welder. It's not a horrific job, it's just very big. Now I left the cross members out here because before I go putting this inner wing in, I want to make sure it sits properly on top of the cross members so I know that the body is in the right location. By the time that the cars got to this sort of era, these mount pads, they became less adjustable and they were kind of welded onto the chassis, and then they had these big rubber pads on the top. Again, before I finish, all of this lot needs to come off, be painted properly before it goes back together again. Give it a fighting chance. And then as I work my way along the chassis, I will continue to kind of paint and protect. Oh look, there's the lid I've been looking for. I wonder where that had gone to. Dropped down inside the spring turret. That's my drilling lubricant. Keeps the drills going for a little bit longer. Yeah, so I think really my next job now, let's get this thing welded together and in. I don't need to show you me doing that. It's not that exciting. And then once it is in, or before it goes in, I'm going to cut all this shit off here. I want it in place so that when I make up repairs down here, I know how they're going to need to sit. Yes, well, like I say, it's not horrific. It's devastating, but the thing's going to head in the right direction from this point. We're almost at the point where we've stopped pulling things out of this car, and we're going to start putting things back on it again. I'm pleased that the BOGE is working. Basically, I haven't really explained it, have I? This thing lifts the back end of the car, so the weight of the back end of the car is on this thing, and it's a hydrogen-filled chamber. And it's, you know, it's got a lot of strength in it. Now, basically, I cannot move this thing at all. I can't push it in. I can't do anything with it. In fact, you can see it's wedged up there against the underside of the bracket. So what I need to do is jack the chassis up and then relocate the bolts back on. Ball joints are okay. So all of this floor section is now quite flexible, really. I'm going to replace this piece here. I'm just going to cut it out and seam weld it in. That was just a MOT bucket. Enough MOT buckets, Richard. Let's just start doing this thing proper. And it is getting towards the point where I am closer and closer and closer to actually just replacing the bloody sill on this thing, because I looked at the bottom edge down there and I've already patched this sill once. You can see where I've patched that, and all of the metal around where the body mounting is just soft as fuck. I'm just able to tear it apart. And again, this is all damp because road wheel has been firing. There should be a panel that runs down here that protects the end of the sill, and because that rotted away, I think I'm going to have to do the sills on this thing. Certainly this passenger side sill, but again, it's another thing I don't have to do moving forwards. Right, let's get on with this thing. Let's get this thing. So I want this thing in today, and it is now about 1:30. Not managed to weld it in yet. It's the end of my Sunday. I've had enough. It's gone 5 o'clock. I'm going home to have some ale. Now, a couple of things. I put the cross members in. To my mind, the giant washers that are stacked on that end, they're a little bit too tall for these panels. Hence, it's tilting it upwards very, very, very slightly. So I'm inclined to actually slim those down so that that piece there sits flat on the top. I shall double check that before I go too much further. I've got the outer wing back on because I've been trial fitting absolutely everything up. The gap on the back wing is too wide. You can see here, you can get virtually a whole finger. It's consistent, but it's too wide. That gap hasn't changed because I haven't changed the hinges. The door aperture hasn't changed because I haven't changed that. When we open the door, you see arches and everything on, we'll notice that the alignment holes here for the back wing, well, they're too far back, but the wing, I believe, is in the right place. So the only thing I can think that might have happened is that the wing needs to go further forwards. And down here I can see, yes, it does. Look, there we go. That's moved quite a long way forwards. Also, this panel's got damage on it, so rather than faffing around, which is why it's covered in scratches, because I've not been looking after it, I'm actually inclined to get my other panel and get that fitted on instead. It's not shutting very nicely at the moment, purely because everything is held together with self-tappers, the whole thing, because I wanted to get everything aligned before I went berserk with Mr. Welder. Now, this one here, I can adjust that and push that down on top. This one here, I can't. It's just too much lift on that end there, and as you can see, it's not actually sitting right on the pad anyway. This is all going to come out anyway for me to do the chassis. I wanted to try and get, shut now. Try and get everything lined up. Now, the only real concern I've got is the positioning of the back wing. Like I say, I don't think that's actually a huge challenge. It's literally just held on with self-tappers. In fact, none of these holes here are lining up, so that's going to be where my problem lies. It's probably a little bit on the low side, and it's a little bit too... So I reckon if I lift the back up, it'll slide forwards. Oh, it's been an epic day. Oh my goodness. As you can see, the tank's still in. The tank is still in the car. I need to adjust the tailgate. Yeah, the tank's still in the car because I just thought, well, let me get this inner wing over here all lined up. You can see I welded the arch to the panel and then zinc primed it underneath and then rattle canned it with a black satin, so at least there's no bare metal underneath. It will still need seam sealing, but I didn't want to start splashing the seam sealer around, largely because I thought, oh, I might be welding today. As it turned out, it's not going to happen because, like I say, I'm packing up. But I'm quite pleased with that. I think once I made that panel to close in the arch over there, because it's all just a big fucking shambles at the moment, I'll probably end up cutting out and then welding another piece in. It's all covered by carpet and trim anyway, but it needs to look better than that. Yeah, I think. Car's sort of like, although it's all going to come apart again, it is starting to go together. You can see there, I can open this gap out really because the wing's not actually attached in any way. It's just literally held on with one self-tapper at the top and one spine nut at the front. But my car's coming back together again. My car is coming back together. Scrap pile's growing. Yesy McYes face, I think, is the answer there. The only reason I got that clamp there, by the way, is because there was so much tension on this end, it was popping this end up, which is why when I clamped that down, I saw that it was pushing that end up. So I'm going to shorten, like I say, shorten this washer. I think that's the way forwards with it. Yes. Good car. Right, packing up. Packing up. Monday tomorrow, back to the day job.